Hi everyone, I'm Megan. I'm a bar intern. Today we are in Central Tlalli, Ticomostok, to interview Alejandra about her work.
Hi everyone.
I wanted to ask you to tell the camera about yourself a little bit.
Yes, my name is Alejandra Tlalli Miles. I'm a mother of two. I've been working for the city of San Jose for over 20 years, and I've published 3 books.
Onto your book, what led you to explore the history of your ancestors and your people's history in your book, Finding Family and Ancestors?
So in 2018, I started experiencing, I describe it as like a spiritual calling to really know more about myself, like where I come from, who my ancestors were. And so I started asking my family questions about like our ancestors, grandparents, great-grandparents. And I realized quickly that we didn't know a lot about where we came from. Like we knew the names of my grandparents and my great-grandparents, and pretty much that was it. So I wanted to do more research. So I started doing the research because I really felt like, I don't know, there was just like this calling for me to really find out where I come from. Like, do I have indigenous roots? One of the things about my family is that most of the people in my family are very fair-skinned, but there's a few of us that are more darker skinned and look more indigenous. And I'm one of those individuals, so I really wanted to get to the root of that. So as I started embarking on the research, I did research for over a year, and I was able to trace my family back to 1650 in the state of Michoacan, Mexico. And my family has actually been in Mexico before some of the names of our indigenous land was changed to Spanish names. So I have the records of some of my family being in places in Mexico where they still had indigenous names before the Spaniards changed the names to Spanish names.
Thank you for your heartfelt answer. I know as someone whose parents immigrated from Vietnam, and I've always felt like a part of that history is also very covered. And thank you for sharing about how the tough Spanish history intersects with Mexica identity. So how has your heritage as an indigenous Mexica woman informed your work?
So right now, so I'm not only Mexica, like I descend from many First Nations like Otomis, Chichimecas, Mazahuas, Mazatlincas, Purépechas. So the story's more complicated, you know, but it has really given me grounding and centering, and it's really brought me to Centro Tlalli Ticomostok to learn more about the culture. And also right now I'm on this process where I'm learning to be a cultural teacher. So I'm on a one-year program where I'm learning lessons from a maestro in Mexico City. And I'm also learning Nahuatl, the indigenous language of the Mexica. So it's really given me a purpose and centering me, and then also helping me to prepare to bring others on the journey to help them to find their indigenous identities.
100%. Indigenous identity is so much more intersectional than people usually believe. Right. And also thank you for sharing about your journey to become a culture teacher. That sounds amazing. So on top of that, in your journey to find out more about your ancestors, were there any memorable moments, either discoveries or events?
Yeah, one of the first things that I discovered was that my grandmother's name was actually not what my family thought her name was. So it's kind of a complicated story, but basically, to make a really long story short, my grandmother was given away at birth. And so when she was given away, the family who took her in and raised her gave her a different name that my family always thought that was her name, but they didn't realize that at birth she had a different name. So that kind of disrupted a lot of, it disrupted and it brought up a lot of feelings within the family, because we have a lot of family members who think they're named after my grandmother. And then, 75 years later, it's like you realize that wasn't her name. So that was one of the very first discoveries, and it was kind of like an emotional discovery for a lot of different family members.
And names are so tied to identity. So these things that may seem small to most other people are actually very central to people from ethnic backgrounds, right? So I wanted to ask about whether or not you have any regrets, either from your journey or just writing the discovery process.
No, I don't have any regrets, because I really felt like I wanted to dig deep into the history and really find out the truth. Whatever that truth was, however painful or joyful it was, I just wanted to really find out the truth of where we come from.
Did you face any uncomfortable situations maybe with your family or friends while working on this? Any barriers at all with people thinking about your work or perceiving your work?
I did face some barriers with my family because in Mexican culture, it's like favored to be Spaniard and it's looked down upon to be indigenous. And so when I came to the root and the evidence that we do descend from indigenous people, that was uncomfortable for some of my family members.
The impacts of colonization,
Right.
imperialism, they go so deep, and they go deep into the, not just that level, but beyond your roots and so on. So thank you for telling us about that. What do you want readers to take away from your book?
I want people that that are thinking like, oh, I come from a small town or a small village. I want them to know that the information is out there and there's a lot of resources that are free. So it's not going to cost you anything besides the time that you invest in looking for the information, and that it's easier than you think. So Megan, this is the English edition of my book. And the book is broken down into 4 sections. Section 1 is the story of my grandmother, and I follow her roots back as far as I can. And then section 2 is the story of my grandfather. I follow his roots back as far as I can. And then section 3 is the story of my grandparents together. And then section 4 really is dedicated to the reader because I offer templates and I offer some information, resources, and some common terminology that's used in historical documents so that anybody who is going to embark on the journey for the first time has kind of a guide and a step-by-step process on how to go about researching their ancestors. This right here is a template which kind of shows the ancestors and how it's kind of like to show a family tree. But really, when you see shows on TV, the family tree is pretty and you see the roots and there's branches everywhere. But in reality, our family trees are not like that. You may get to a branch and then you might not have additional documentation down that branch. So then you have to stop and go down another branch. So the tree might not look exactly like a tree, but this is kind of a graphic to give you a visual on how the ancestors lay out, and it shows the date, their dates when they were born, and a bit of information about the city or place where they were born, or an important historical document that was found. My book is available on Amazon, and it's available in Spanish, English, and bilingual edition Spanish-English.
I wanted to ask you, what's next?
What's next is becoming a culture teacher, being more proficient in the Nahuatl language, and I don't know, there may be a book in the future, I'm not sure yet.
So awesome, and thank you so much for this interview today. It was really great meeting you, Alejandra, and your story inspires me so much. I hope all goes well with your journey to become a culture teacher, and for your books, future books. So yeah, this is Megan, I'm a volunteer, and this has been our interview at Center at Tlalli Talk. Thank you.